Hi everyone, it's Janine from It's Naturally Neen, and today I wanted to talk about my experience with autoimmune and the vegan diet. So as you may know, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 15. At this point, I've been dealing with that for almost 20 years. I was also diagnosed with interstitial cystitis, which is a bladder condition. It feels like a UTI, but you don't have a UTI. It's really awful. And I've also had chronic hives, which is connected to histamine. So I decided to go vegan, I want to say it was in 2020, beginning of 2020, because COVID had just hit. At this point in time, I wasn't on any real RA medications. I wasn't taking any biologics. I wasn't taking methotrexate. I believe I was taking maybe a small amount of prednisone, like 5 milligrams, and I was loading up on Tylenol and Advil. Yes, I know, it's awful, I know. So this is how I went into the vegan diet. And what kind of vegan diet did I do? If you know the medical medium, his name I believe is Anthony William. He claims to be an intuitive. So the diet that he recommends, he's the guy who recommends celery juice. Celery juice in the morning, first thing upon waking up. So I was for a full year on the celery juice train. I would start my morning with a little lemon water, then I'd have a big 32-ounce glass of freshly juiced organic celery. I would then follow that with a heavy metal detox smoothie. And then after that, I would have one of his dishes that he'd recommend. But what you need to know, I guess the important part, is that I went vegan. I was eating asparagus with tomatoes and potatoes for lunch. I was having salads, or I was having bowls of fruit, and then I would do the same thing for dinner. I recall eating a lot of potatoes, a lot of tomatoes, a lot of asparagus, a lot of mango salads, mango banana smoothies, a lot of watermelon, putting maple syrup on the bananas. I was not eating rice. I was not eating any sort of grains. I would at times have some nuts, but I believe it was just cashews. I would make like a cashew sauce, but that was more of the exception. I wasn't eating beans. I wasn't eating any processed vegan food. And so I'm just sharing this with you so that you can understand the kind of vegan diet I was doing. What happened? Well, I'm no longer on the diet, and I obviously don't believe in medical medium anymore. So that might give you a clue where this is going. I want to start out with the pros of the diet. And I guess there might be 3 pros. So one is my bowel movements suddenly were perfect. Like I would have probably 2 to 3 beautiful bowel movements per day, exactly what you want it to look like, always on time, no real digestive issues. And that is actually something worth noting, because before I went into the vegan diet, I was chronically constipated. I remember trying to do a GI map stool test for my functional medicine doctor, and it taking like 2 weeks to complete because I literally couldn't have a bowel movement to give a stool test. So the fact that I went from not going to the bathroom at all to having regular, beautiful, clean, that was notable. I would say as far as joint pain, I was pretty bad joint pain going into the diet, and I felt about 2 weeks of relief. And I wouldn't even say by relief, I don't mean the joint pain went away. I just mean that it felt a little better. And probably the final bonus is that I felt skinny. I was skinny. I didn't have any muscle at the time, but that's also in part my fault because, well, not my fault. I physically couldn't work out. So those are the benefits. Now, the cons, I would say that literally every symptom that I was experiencing going into vegan got worse. or I just developed new symptoms. So what got worse? Brain fog worsened. Fatigue. Now it really went off the charts. So when I look back, I can see that I was spiking my blood sugar first thing in the morning with that heavy metal detox smoothie. I didn't know it, but I was literally raising my blood sugar through the roof with that. And then the rest of the day, having these meals that have fruit and not really much protein, no fat, because he really recommends lowering fat, getting away from fat, which in a sense, I get, because when you're vegan, you're eating so much fruit, so much sugar. So if you pair that with fat, that is a recipe for disaster. However, if you're just having fruit smoothies all day, you're constantly spiking your blood sugar. It's the protein and the fat that help stabilize blood sugar. So what does that mean? What does that look like? In the morning, I will wake up, I would have my heavy metal detox smoothie, and about an hour and a half later, I would need to lay down to go back to sleep because I couldn't keep my eyes open. It literally felt like I was comatose, like almost to the point where I couldn't make sense of things. Like my speech would get slurred. And this is super concerning for me also at the time because I'm taking Adderall, and I'm like, Adderall also spikes your body too. But I'm taking Adderall. This is literally amphetamine, and I can't keep my eyes open. So I would be awake for, an hour and a half before I would need to lay back down again and take a significant nap before I could function again. And after eating lunch, the same thing would happen. It was just roller coaster all day long. And when your body's on this roller coaster of these really high sugar spikes and then these lows, your body's alarm system turns on. And I didn't know this at the time, but your body kind of goes into a state of fight or flight. It's like mayday, mayday, alarm, alert, on. And so I was experiencing a high level of anxiety at the time. Also, not surprisingly, I was experiencing insomnia. When you have your blood sugar all over the place all day long, it's not surprising to have sleep issues. And so for me, I was experiencing where I would be able to sleep from 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. I'd wake up and I'd be awake until 5 a.m. And then I'd finally fall back asleep. And at 7:30, my alarm would go off for work. And so I was a wreck. I was a disaster. So far we've covered brain fog, fatigue, needing naps, insomnia. As far as joint pain, I said I experienced a couple of weeks of relief. Well, that quickly changed, and the joint pain went through the roof. Whereas before, I could walk down the steps generally okay. I shouldn't say okay. It was with a lot of pain and maneuvering, but it got to the point where then my boyfriend at the time was carrying me down the steps. And I have an infrared blanket, which is a blanket you go in and it helps you sweat and detox. He would have to lower me into the blanket because I could no longer get myself down to the floor. The only thing that I found gave me relief during those times was taking an activated charcoal pill and getting in the sweat blanket and sweating a lot. I now know activated charcoal isn't the best thing to be taking, certainly not regularly, but at the time that was the only thing that provided me relief. And so I did it. A symptom that came back once I went vegan was vertigo. And I remember laying in bed at night, in the morning, and just the room spinning. And it's like I would have to position myself in a certain way to stop the spinning. But then if I had accidentally rolled over in the middle of the night, it would come right back. If I went up to go to the bathroom, the room would be spinning. It was very destabilizing, and it became very paralyzing at certain times where it's like I can't even leave the house because I don't know if I'm going to be okay. A symptom that way flared during vegan is acne. So when I went into vegan, I was experiencing a little acne. Once I became vegan, it was off the charts. to me, I felt embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to see my face. There was a lot of shame involved. You can just imagine all the feelings that you're feeling during this time when you have all this stuff going on. You're like, what the hell's wrong with my body? I was trying all these different skincare washes, eventually went to the dermatologist, and that helped a bit. It didn't fully take care of the issue, but now looking back, now that I know my body a lot better and I'm informed about blood sugar, I can see how the blood sugar spikes would have really contributed to the acne. I experienced a fair amount of bloating. So even though I was having really nice bowel movements, my stomach would be puffed out a fair amount of the time. And just one random side fact that I'll note with regard to the joint pain is I remember eating these meals at my desk because I was working. And so I'd have my breakfast or my lunch. And after each meal, it was like the inflammation and the swelling just doubled in my body. Like whatever the baseline was before that meal, it then doubled. And so come lunchtime, I remember going to get up from my desk to use the bathroom or put the food away or whatever it is. And my knees were like bowling balls, and suddenly like I can't straighten my legs fully. So my legs are stuck at maybe, what is that? It's not 90 degrees, 75 degrees. It's stuck 45, forget it. I'm stuck at like halfway, and I'm kind of walking like that. And I wasn't walking like that before the meal. And so I'm thinking in my head, what the hell? All these foods are supposed to be so healing, but it seems that once I eat, my pain, my swelling doubles. What's up with that? Oh, and my teeth. So I have always had nice teeth and very rarely would have any teeth issues. Well, during vegan, all of a sudden, the fronts of all my teeth became super rough. Like it felt like someone took sandpaper and rubbed it against each tooth. And so they almost felt like porous. And then I chipped my front tooth, which I still have that chip. But my teeth became super brittle. And lastly, the whole vegan diet was extremely time consuming, and I never really felt satiated. So after about a year of this, I decided, hey, this isn't working. I'm surprised I even made it a year because, the symptoms, nothing was working for me. But what people like to tell you is that this is detox. Oh, things get worse before they get better. You just have to stick with it. It can take years, especially if you've been sick for a very long time. It's almost like vegan harder. And so that's what I started to do. I went from vegetarian to vegan to then raw vegan, and then I cut out all salt, and then I cut out all fat. So whereas before I was having avocado or olive oil, now I'm not doing that. All my salads, disgusting, without any oil. So I'm completely fat-free, which, I now know is awful for your hormones. Sorry if this offends you, but you never want to cut out all fat. And then from raw vegan, I started to go towards fruitarian because I got into the work of Dr. Robert Morse and his theory that your body is acidic, and so therefore to heal, you need to make it more alkaline, and you need lots of fruits, and you need to get away from meat and all the things. So I started to go towards fruitarian, and I, in the middle of winter, am having big bowls of bananas and maple syrup, or a big bowl of cantaloupe, or a big bowl of watermelon, and I feel like complete shit. I'm having big pineapple juices that I squeeze myself, big orange juices. My acne is going out of control. And mind you, it's 10 degrees outside. And the way that I now like to think of it about an ideal way of eating is to eat where your climate is. Eat seasonally. Try to eat locally. I know that's hard and I often can't do it, but I try my best to think about what are people eating in my region? And a helpful tip for me is, what if I were to eat this outside right now? So if I were to go outside and it's 10-degree weather, am I going to want a salad, like a bunch of leafy greens, no dressing, with fruit on top? Absolutely not. Am I going to want an ice cold pineapple juice? Am I going to want a big bowl of bananas? Unlikely not. But if you offer me a hearty stew or some chili or something warm and soothing and savory, yes, because it's cold outside. And so we're meant to match the sun, the circadian rhythm, the codes in our environment. And this diet completely just broke all those rules. But to get back to what I was saying, for the longest time, I thought this is just detox. And then at a certain point, I just honored my intuition, like all along. I remember having energy sessions with people and they're like, oh, the diet's working for you. And I'm like, but I feel like it's not. And so I would just disregard myself to go with what they said, to go with what medical medium was saying, and to just stick to the path. And then at a certain point, I reached a moment where I'm like, no, screw this. It's not working for me. I can feel it in my body that it's not working for me. My body hates this, actually. And that's when I started to reincorporate meat products. And I'm someone who loves animals. The idea of eating an animal does make me sad, but for my health, I had to do it. And the way that I try to honor the animal the best that I can is by shopping mostly from farms. I get primarily my meat from farms that are holistic or halal, who raise and slaughter ethically, and where the animals had a good life. They weren't in a crate in a very caged in environment. They actually were out in fields and able to enjoy the life that they had. For me, I firmly believe that veganism is an easy way to develop nutrient deficiencies, and that it can exacerbate symptoms because there are anti-nutrients in the foods that you're eating. I'm not saying that everyone has the same anti-nutrient responses, but I have in myself since experimented and found that, oh shoot, I really can't tolerate, for example, white potatoes. Or maybe if I do, it's got to be like this big of a potato, and then I'm not having it the next day. I'm not having it the day after that. And so everyone has a different tolerance. But I feel like, especially medical medium, it's kind of like all these foods are so healing, and any propaganda that tells you it's not is not true. That's false. We all have our different tolerances, and to just throw caution to the wind and be like, I can tolerate all this because it's supposed to be healthy, that's not true. Ideally, that's where we can get to, but that's probably not where you are today, and that's where I found myself. So if you found this helpful, please click subscribe. I have more videos describing other things that I tried and my experience with them. Not to say that that will be your experience, but just to provide some insight as to some things I experienced, and hopefully they resonate with you. Thanks.